A big thing that a lot of us, I would say, struggle with, but it's the mechanics of doing business, right? Where it can be challenging sometimes to really figure out how to get all these systems to work out. Hoping by the end of this presentation, we all would have a better understanding of some of the things to take into consideration that will be good for us as business people, and also how to help our investor have a more seamless or a better experience when investing with us. So I won't delay it too much. I think everyone so far has been with us. Dwayne, is this your first time with us, brother? Dwayne, is this your first time with us? Dwayne Barron?
There he is.
I've been to a few of meetings before.
Okay, all right, cool. All right, so we're about almost 10 minutes into it. A lot of familiar faces. Then we're going ahead. Heath, got anything to add before we kick it off?
No, ready for the meetup. I may not be able to stay around for the breakout session today, so everybody else will have a breakout session afterwards. So everybody gets to everybody else, talk about things. We always want this to be a place where if you have a deal, if you have money, if you need a deal, if you need anything, talk to the people in the room, because you'll be surprised at how quickly you can start to find people who are looking for what you have, or vice versa. So that's one of the best parts of these. We get a whole heap of information from our guest speaker, and then we're able to network afterwards. So be sure to stick around for that. I'm sure everybody's here has been a part of that. So yeah, so with that, take it over, Hutch.
All right. So Quinn, I'll let you do your introduction to yourself. So we met Ed. Well, I was listening to a podcast recently that Heath and I did with Ruben Greth. And we were talking about how we actually met the Groundbreaker team, right? And it was out at the Best Ever Conference in 2020. This is in February, right before everything went crazy, right? And Ed was this guy. He walk around and gives everyone coffee, and this little guy walking and give everybody coffee and all the good stuff, and just such a sweet personality, right? And then we talk about just meeting up after one of the day's events at the Airbnb that Ed and his team was renting. And, we thought I was going to go there and get pitched and, pitch the Groundbreaker platform and all the good stuff. We got there and, just a whole bunch of beautiful people that just want to be in the space to talk shop and talk about their personality and talk about their whys and all the good stuff. And we left that night asking, what is Groundbreaker again? Because Ed wanted to bring people together, right? He wanted to bring people together so we can learn who we are and who each other are, because we grow farther, together, you know what I mean? So he brought us together and he taught us how to do search engine optimization, which every one of us should have an idea of the importance of that, because that is how our business get known, and also the content that we create and how they get pushed to other folks, you know what I mean? So, that was great value add, Ed, and we actually later on work with the Groundbreaker platform, and we're hoping that Quinn can give us a better insights of how we can leverage that platform to make our business better. So without further ado, Mr. Quinn, and thank you, Ed, for coordinating this.
Woo, Ed, right? Hutch, thank you. Yeah, what I talk about tonight, I'll get into a little bit of the platform potentially if people want to see it, but generally, our stance is we like to provide as much value as possible, kind of like at Ever Conference. We want to certainly try and help folks like yourselves who are getting into your first deals or have a few deals under your belt. Consider how you do things, and if there's ways we can help with that, we certainly want to be. So what I'm presenting this evening is all about the raise, right? Kind of mastering the raise is what we call it. And forgive me, guys, because presenting on Zoom is like a whole new. I'm very much a in-person presenter.
Really tough because if you just see your screen, you can't really see other people's reactions because they're all sort of
worst. Like I was talking to someone the other day, like I'm always fascinated by presenters, and like someone like Tony Robbins, for example, like how are you doing something like for him specifically, like he's so huge, like in real life, right? Like he's like 6'6", he's not a small human. So like that has a lot to do with his presence. And someone was telling me that and I was like, oh yeah, I'm 6'6". Like I'm very accustomed to that. When I'm getting I thought you were talking about Zoom, but yeah, genetics. I don't know what to say about that. It's tough. The growing pains are real though. Like I remember, like I think I grew a foot over 2 years when I was like 11 and 12 years old. I grew like 6 inches a year, and like I had like months where I couldn't sleep because my legs hurt so bad. It was insane.
I'm with you. I did the same thing. I grew like 6 or 7 inches between 8th grade and 9th grade, and it's nuts. You don't realize that that's going to happen, and then people always talk about it, and then when it does, you're like, oh, this is what they mean.
Oh, that's serious. Yeah, like you're reaching for your toothbrush in the morning and like breaking the mirror. Like my arm wasn't that long yesterday. What the hell just happened here? So yeah, it's a whole thing. So these Zoom presentations are always interesting. You will see me look. I have my notes on a different screen, so forgive me if I look a little disengaged, just because I'm looking at those. But generally, here's kind of the intro to this, right? So we call this Master the Raise, a guide to creating the ideal investor experience. A lot of what we do at Groundbreaker is investor experience related, right? We have a portal software that helps with fundraising and taking contributions, doing distributions, disseminating information, K1, stuff like that. So we see a lot of what the market does. Bigger guys, smaller guys, people that have done a few deals, people that have done a lot of deals. So what we do is try and kind of take that information and get it out there so people have a much better understanding of like not only what we do, but hopefully what the market's doing, and some really cool tools you may be able to bring on to help with your deals as well. So in a general sense, you can kind of think of this is very crude, but you can kind of think of our software like almost like an automated investor relations platform, but it's also got capital exchange capabilities with like ACH for contributions to distributions. But I don't get too much into that. We can, if you guys want to ask questions about the software specifically at the end, we can certainly jump into some of those. But again, my name's Quinn Butler. I'm head of business development at Groundbreaker. What we're going to cover tonight is something that we talk a lot about with clients that come to us. And the first thing is don't trip at the finish line, right? What that's referencing is there's a lot of work that goes into syndication, right? Locating a property, doing the due diligence, getting the financing, all that type of stuff, right? The raise is kind of one of the last things you think about. And I think a lot of us come into that with sort of preconceived notions of how that's going to go. And a lot of times that causes us to trip at the finish line. We're turning the last 3 feet of the race into the most difficult because we don't prep for it, right? So how we deal with that, we do a lot of that through what we would call experience building, right? So the 3 things that I like to talk about are roadmap, getting out in front, really helping your investors understand what they are going to do, the steps they're going to see, make it abundantly clear so they're never uncertain about anything. Close the education gap. Now the education gap has specifically to do with that, dearth of information that you generate when you go and find a property, right? You're finding the demographics, you're finding all the historicals, you're finding everything. We really try to help you find the tools to synthesize that and get it to the investors where, right? And then eliminate the dig. That is referring more to mostly post-raise type of stuff, but post-raise, most of the questions that you get from investors are like, hey, where's my K1, right? Or, hey, where's that document I signed? Or, hey, where's this? And it just turns into like, you are digging. You're you're digging through emails, through spreadsheets, through everything, just trying to find anything you can, stay on top of that. And if you had something that could self-service them, that's a huge plus, right? One quick thing I want to say, I know we have a decent sized group here. I try not to give boring presentations, so feel free, chime in. Audience participation is very much appreciated. So at some point, oohs and ahs are going to be super appropriate. I don't know when, but in all my presentations, there's always an ooh and ah portion, right? If you want to boo, yes. Oh, you guys we're keeping you guys. So yeah, please feel free, chime in. If you need me to slow down, my favorite is always like down in front, right? That's always the best, right? So if you need any of that, let me know. Feel free, because heckler's gonna heckle. So let's get after it. I want to go after the ancient obligatory quote. I always hate when people open like this, right? Like, hey, here's a bust of Aristotle, and he says some smart things. Like, no, he did. So the reason I bring this up is I think it's really relevant. This is something that a good friend of mine always references. And for this specific presentation, I think it's actually very salient. So the person who cannot articulate what they know is the same as the person who knows nothing. Okay. The reason I say that is because we are going to talk a lot about articulating what you actually know to your investor. Where I'll start is something that I'm sure all of you know for a fact. Real estate syndication is hard, right? It's not as glamorous as everyone thinks it is. You have a lot of property research, due diligence. You've got the financing issues you have to deal with. You have to find investors and kind of court them, et cetera, right? A lot of it's just this, I go and find things and I make money appear and all this other stuff, and it seems very glamorous. But there's so much that goes into this, right? Like, how glamorous is it when you were in that crawl space of that 37 unit down the street, right? And you met that family of raccoons. Super glamorous there, right? It's just a totally different experience than what most people think of it. But what happens in real estate syndication is you go out and you are trying to effectively find great deals, right? You're trying to find something that you can do a value add on. And to be able to do that, you have to do a ton of research, right? You're finding your demographics, you're finding the property history, you're doing that due diligence. And then you finally get to the financing portion and the bank financing specifically, right? Now the fun begins, right? Like the calipers come out and people start to go up places you didn't want to know. And anywhere that your name has ever been on any piece of paper, the bank wants it, right? So you have this entire process where you are trying to secure financing from the bank. That is very difficult. By the time you finish that, you feel amazing. You feel vindicated, right? Like that's such a great process. Like, oh my God, you're going to give me that much money? No way. Let's do this, right? The rest of it seems easy, right? If you were able to go through all of that and convince the bank, like, hey, you guys should give me money. And they were like, yeah, we should give you that money. And you're like, what? Oh my God, yeah, you should give the money. Like, if you go through that, it seems very common sense to be like, okay, if I proved it to the bank, a big financial institution, how hard can it be to go to a investor and be like, hey, I already told the bank this, right? Like, I have all this information, the bank asked me for all this information, but what happens is you try to basically go at the presenter as if, go at the investor as if they're the bank, right? And what does that lead to? It leads to this. It is a mess. It is an assault. You end up sending, we've seen like deal release emails that have like as many as 90 attachments. It is bonkers, right? And what happens, Heath, go ahead. Come on, I know you had a comment there.
90 attachments, or anytime you have to start scrolling down to see the attachments and then try to save them to the same folder, or at least try to organize them, is just maddening.
Yeah,
that's all I can say, because I've been there.
Yeah, and it's like, we can call it like reader paralysis, I guess. For me, I assume it's the same for most people. If someone sends me something that large, or like, I have War and Peace like sitting on my bookshelf and I'm like, I'm going to read that one day. Every time you pick it up, you're like, I forgot how to read. weird. I don't know. I can't do this. I can't hack this right now, right? That's what happens when those emails come through. So what happens to all of those emails? All of those emails become phone calls, right? And that is super inefficient because now it's like, hey Heath, it's Quinn. Hey, what's up, Quinn? So I read all the stuff. No, I didn't. Can you tell me about it? Tell me everything, right? Like that's literally how that conversation goes. And think about how inefficient that is. When you have 20 investors and when you scale, that's incredibly inefficient. Like there is obviously a better way to do that. So we really want to think about, how do we synthesize that information? How do we sort of get with these investors? And let's say that, Heath and I had that conversation and Heath was like, Quinn, listen, this property, like it's in the middle of this like tech boom area and there's like an avocado farm next door and like an alpaca farm next door and the millennials love it, right? And I'm like, dude, I love avocado toast. How can I say no? Like sign me up, right? Okay, well, then what, right? And I think a lot of us kind of forget about like the then what happens, right? Where do I sign? How do I fund? Where do my reports come from? How do I get distributed capital, right? The last thing you want is for someone to say like, hey, I want to give you money, and then have any uncertainty about what's going to happen after that, right? Like the only thing worse than receiving that email with the 90 plus documents attached to it is when you go radio silent after you take their money, right? A little scary. So you really want to make sure you have a well laid out process that shows them like, hey, we're going to do this, and then we go here, and then we go here, and then we go here, right? So what do we want to do to avoid this trap, right? First thing we want to do, build a roadmap. This is a great piece of writing by me right here. Start at the beginning. Oh, that's such cleverness right there. Where did I come up with that? I always think of starting with the elevator pitch first, right? Any company, all the companies I consulted for, et cetera, I always say start with your elevator pitch, right? It really makes you boil down what you do. And I don't want you to come up with your elevator pitch of like, I invest in, 10 to 20 units in these zip codes. Like that's not your elevator pitch, right? Like that's what you do. That's not who you are or what you're doing. So your elevator pitch, you want to think about that. And when you're thinking about that, I want you to think brand first. And a lot of you, that's going to be you individually, property second, right? You need to set clear process and expectations and show your investors exactly where they're going to go step by step, all out front, okay? The next thing we want to talk about is the education gap, okay? The education gap comes in where, you have that email dump, right? You need to somehow get all of that information that you have come up with of why this is a deal warranting capital, right? You need to get that out of your head and into theirs. Well, how do we do that? Think about it like a TED Talk, okay? If you watch a TED Talk, it's long, it's great. Like they always have these great presenters, et cetera. But if you knew the mountain of like books and academic articles and things that they had to go through to synthesize that information to get it to you, like you'd probably be like, oh God, that's kind of like what I do every day, right? I go out and I gather like this massive amount of information. And what we're doing is like, we're presenting that wheelbarrow that we have and like dump it on the investor and be like, hey guys, like I figured it out, you can, like, give me some money. We really need to think about taking it back and trying to create better presentations and really synthesizing that information and getting it to their level. The next thing I talk about is developing your vernacular. This is also part of your branding, right? How you speak to your investors, the terminology that you use. There's a lot of studies about if you can develop common, language with people, it really helps develop the relationship much sooner. So understand like what your brand, kind of buzzwords are, or whatever it is, like really try and use those, put them in your presentation, in your pitch, in your conversations as often as possible. The third thing, use video everywhere. There's a reason TED Talks are on video. It is easily the best knowledge transfer tool we have for humans, right? So there are a number of tools out there. We really like something called Loom, which will record you. It actually just zooms on your face, takes care of the background. Like it's going to record you and the screen you're on at the same time. So it's really informative. Obviously, we're in software, so it's nice to be able to like show a demo and record a video at the same time. And you can do the exact same thing. If you're building out a deal room, or you've got that email or a PDF or whatever it is, or something, like a deal room in our platform, what you can do is you turn on Loom and you walk through it as if the investor is sitting right next to you, right? Like, oh, I'm going to scroll here. Like, I want to call your attention to this, right? Like, I'm going to click on this document. This is going to show us the projected job growth in the area. Now if we scroll down a little bit, this is the projected, population growth in the area. This document over here, this is going to show us like, the density of the unicorn population at the local fountain, like whatever you want to talk about, right? But you got to show them. And the more you show them, the easier it is for them to understand and actually get to the point where they feel comfortable enough or educated enough to give you that capital. Like that's one of the biggest hurdles, I would argue probably the biggest hurdle that most people have is getting, closing this education gap. So my final point on that is video everywhere, when you do reports, when you do property walkthroughs, when you do, deal intros, video, it makes such a massive difference. If you need help on that, certainly ask us. Like, there's a lot of little things you can spend like $30. I have like a $7 ring light here, right? Like, there's just like a lot of things you can do, help with your video quality, that help with your presentation, etc. It is worth the time, worth the investment. Okay, that makes a huge difference. Next thing we talk about is eliminating the dig. All right, this is again, where are we losing everything sort of post raise? The last thing you want to do is just kind of go radio silent and not make your investors feel like you are taking care of their money, right? Now, do they necessarily doubt that? I don't know, but if you're not talking to them, like, wouldn't you be a little worried? So how do we like create consistent content? And also, how do we make it easy for them to access that, right? Now, obviously, that's a little bit tilted toward a portal because I work in a portal, but we really want to focus on making it easy, right? If you have documents, whatever you use, try and make it as centralized as possible and as personalized as possible. Obviously, you can't just upload a bunch of K1s to a folder and give a bunch of people access to it, right? That's a one-to-one situation. But everything else, documents, distributions, reports, stuff like that, really try to put it in as open a place as possible so that they always have access to it. You'd be surprised the time you actually save post-deal when you're not chasing down documentation, right? The last thing you want is to be trying to be out finding new deals, finding new investors, and then you end up spending a full day trying to find documents, right? Not the most efficient use of time. So, quick recap on this. Let's say we went through and completely redid everything, right? We built our roadmap, we made it really clear. Everyone knows exactly what's going to happen, the steps that are going to happen, et cetera. We're closing the education gap by using video. Right? We're getting everyone, everything we do, we're giving full transparency because of video. If you're really fancy, use drone videos, like overdo it on the video. Let's put it that way. And then we eliminate the dig. We find somewhere that's centralized. Maybe we get a portal, do something, and we have all this stuff. Well, now what? That takes a lot of work. So what I want to talk about a little bit is the why, right? If you know and you can articulate your process and it works, that is a huge win, right? From an investor standpoint, the market's going to go up and down. Properties go up and down. Your process should not. Your process ensures repeatable success. Your process, once you have it, becomes part of your brand and therefore part of your competitive advantage, right? If your process is, hey, I have a portal, you come in, you view deals, you can sign digitally, you can fund digitally, and then there's, this document repository, you can log in anytime and find whatever you want. Sell the hell out of that. That is a huge differentiator from what most of the other competition does, right? Most guys are just like, hey, like, here is my return. And I have shaken your dog and kissed your hand more than this guy. You should do business with me, right? Or they're so focused on like, my deal is going to be better than the next guy's deal. But from a longevity standpoint, like, who really cares? We're all very subject to the fluctuations in the market. But if someone sees you as having a solid process and you have a reason for each step that you have and everything that you do, that's going to build trust, right? That's when you get to like, if you have a down month or a down quarter or whatever it is, you still have that process to lean on and say, hey, listen, we are going to stick to this. We're still in, we have someone coming in. They're missing the best part. Just kidding.
I was going to say the same thing. I'm like, they're coming in at the perfect time. Like I just screenshot this screen right here. This is good right here. I've something similar about this, but not quite like this. Sell your process, not your projects. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and it's like that's, if you really think about it, like selling your projects is all going to come down to like, there's a lot of market speculation, right? So even if they really dig in, they could potentially disagree with you on the market speculation for like the geographical area that you're in, or maybe the asset class that you're in, or something like that, right? But if you can sell them a process and you say, this is how we do this, this is how we do our due diligence, this is how we do our research, this is how we get our funding, this is how we make sure we get, you know, the right people on board and our property management and whatever you want to highlight, you sell your process. That's what people work with. People don't work with you on a project by project basis. That's silly. It seems that way, right? Because you think by presenting the deal to them first, they're going to look and be like, oh, this is a great deal, I should really invest. I wouldn't. I'm looking at being like, you know, like Warren Buffett always talks about the he doesn't invest in companies, he invests in people. He looks at the leadership first, right? He doesn't look at the widget they build or anything like that. He looks and goes like, are these guys idiots or do I trust them? That's why he hasn't invested in me yet, because I'm an idiot. But someday I'll grow up. But that's what you want to look at, you know, like really try to think about the why. And again, I'm not going to be shy about telling you like that it takes some work and it takes, you know, a little bit of like being uncomfortable, getting accustomed to being on video and stuff like that. But there are a lot of really great tools out there to help with that. So in regards to that, just to kind of wrap up some of this stuff from our vantage point, and again, we talk to a lot of syndicators that are a lot of different levels and a lot of different stages. The biggest mistake that we see in this market is starting too late. And I say that specifically with the raise, for example, right? So what often happens from our standpoint is we get a call from someone and they're like, hey, so I'm in my due diligence period and I've got like 12 days left and I already have an investor like signed up. Can we just set everything up? No. What? Like software takes a little bit of time to set up. And at that point, you know, you're really kind of playing from behind, right? And I think too many people think about like, you know, this is getting very specific about Groundbreaker, but in investment portal and things like that, they think about it as a way to kind of like hold everything or have a system of record or like have something that looks pretty and gives them credibility. And that's nice, right? But we don't want to help you salvage deals, right? We don't want to get in halfway through and be like, oh God, let us help you like clean up this mess because you don't know what you're doing. Because inevitably what happens is, any of you guys that have done a raise is a slightly more stressful than average period in your life, right? It's not the most fun when you're in the midst of a raise. Now think about doing a raise and onboarding the software at the same time. That is hell on earth. And generally speaking, you are not going to learn anything from us, as we have a very, very extensive onboarding process where we like basically do almost everything for you. We teach you all the nuts and bolts, really go very deep on it. But if you are so distracted by that raise, you're really not going to get anything out of it, right? So we want to use this process and think about our platform in a very similar way. We want to use it to start creating winning deals, right? Not salvaging them. Does that make sense to everyone? So in light of that, and you guys can see I have a logo, you know, in my thing here. So clearly someone's paying me to be here. So I do probably have to mention something. In light of that, you know, we see a lot of people starting, you know, too late. So what we are doing, it's kind of an experiment specifically for this group. So I think it'd actually be really cool. Basically, if you sign up just for like a demo with us by the end of April, we'll give you a month free. Because we know like establishing some of this and using the platform to like determine what your process is. The nice thing is like the platform is, it's not truly a business in a box, but it definitely gets you started. It really shows you like, hey, here's where things go. We have a lot of suggestions on like where, you know, you can utilize video and things like that. So at the very least, like I would say, talk to one of our people because you can gain a lot of insight into what a good process looks like. So I think we're gonna have Ed. Do we have a landing page or something that you can just drop in? Sweet. Ed's on mute.
I've got a link. I just shared it in the chat.
Oh, perfect. So there's a chat in Zoom, guys. I just learned this right now. I'm just kidding. But yeah, feel free, click on that link. If you happen to get stuck with me doing your sales presentation, I am sorry, but we're a little shorthanded right now, so you may get me. So forgive me if that happens. Yes, so questions about any of that? Was it so good that there are no questions? Is that a thing?
But I have a question.
Yes.
When, because I'm new to the multifamily world, when you say the raise, that's talking about raising money for from the investors. Is that what you are?
Correct. So like your private equity raise as opposed to your like bank raise.
Right.
So generally the bank raise is, and Heath, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're usually between like 70 and 80% of bank financing, and then you're raising the rest from outside capital.
For bigger deals, if you get 80%, you're rocking it.
Oh, for sure.
So they'll tell you 80%, and then as you're getting close to closing, they're like, actually, we're going to be able to do 76. And that's one thing to know as well. You should be prepared for what you get on the term sheet may not necessarily be what you get towards closing. Our friends at Four Oaks Capital have a story or two how that went down for them. But they were and just go from an 80-20 split to a 90-10 split so that the investors kept right, and then they had to do some additional raising. But you are correct in that 75 to 80% raise, and then the rest, all your repairs, your rehab, all your reserves that you have, the lender reserves, you have to raise all that in addition to the down payment, which is 20 to 25%.
No more questions?
I think the thing that what most people don't realize, I think a lot of times you go to conferences, you go to places, and they're like, the process, you just got to have in process and put in processes. But I think coming from trying to go through all this, you don't really realize how much goes into setting up the processes that are required. Anybody who's been on campaign or constant contact can attest to setting up things so that they flow in a certain way, and it's trial and errors. I mean, I don't know how many people out there have done software coding. I've done a little in my job, and it's just, you basically just put it together, and when it doesn't work, you find out where it doesn't work, you run it again, and where it doesn't work the second time, and it's just reiterative process. So to Quinn's point, if you have a process that's been streamlined, you have now cut out a significant amount of work for someone else. And if you could sell that to them, I mean, that's just an incredible thought I hadn't, thought of. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
To drive the point home there, the thing about the process, yeah, it's great. It's going to help you run your business, but it's what gives you credibility when you're speaking with investors. So take that and focus on what that process is. What do you do to choose a property, right? Like, so that people can trust the general partner in the deal more than if they were not. And most people will have a process, but they may not be talking about it. They may not be highlighting it. So that's the point, is highlight your process to your LPs, because that's going to help you be more credible.
That's a great point. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think generally, like, there's a lot of information out there about, how to build a waterfall, or how to, there's 1,000 different due diligence docs out there that you can download from a lot of different educators, right? I don't think anyone specifically addresses this part of it, right? I often make the joke of, I feel like we're the only ones in the market who are like, oh, we want to take care of the people that give you money. What a weird concept, right? Like they're handing over all this capital to you. Like maybe, I don't know, like if someone was giving me a lot of money, I want to be like, hey, I'm going to make this really easy for you to give me. But
Right.
the general way is like, hey, so here's some loops. I'm gonna let this on fire real quick. Okay, now go, right? Like that's a lot of times how we treat investors when they're trying to give you capital.
So Quinn, now I'm going to see if test you on your opening quote. So I'm going to kind of mirror back to you what I believe that you're pitching here is it's like a CRM that's a portal that your investors can tap into and see how everything is functioning with any particular property that they might be investing in.
Correct. So
That's brilliant.
what's that?
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Because that has been something, it's like how that I've been just coming into this and learning all the due diligence about, being investing in single family, there is the aspect of due diligence, that all the stuff that you talked about before, but there is that other part. It's like, how do I allow people to come that will be trusting me to come in to basically, my books to see how things are going in a very easy manner so that they can continue to develop that trust. And so that's just great, because I wondered if this, because like you're saying, no one ever talks about this. And it's just, I gonna get like kind of not disregarded, but just like, well, just focus on where you're going to invest first. And I'm like, I want to have a nice picture of how the system is going to work from start to finish. And this is filling in that gap for me. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think and Ken, if you like, I don't generally do this, but if anyone's interested, like I can show you. I won't go in depth, but maybe just show you a couple.
Yeah. So I was going to
absolutely.
say,
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that you're talking about today, how can you use Groundbreaker to leverage sort of the systems that you guys have built? What have you guys put together that helps syndicators communicate to investors?
So
Can you show us?
Yeah, for sure. Let me make sure I've got one pulled up. Give me one moment. So in a general sense, right, like what we deliver to you is a URL, right? And you're plugging that URL into your website. So like if you have an investor login button or investor portal button, right? It would link directly to this. There's a login. I'm just starting on the dashboard here. But this is what your investor sees when they log in, right? Now, the metrics are pretty light. Most people ask that we keep it that way. We're mostly tracking committed capital, which means they said they're going to give you money. Contributed is once you accept that. Total distributions, pretty self-explanatory, and then the return multiple, right? So we're not, we don't have an account to this. Like I said, I mean, think of this like investor relations automation in a sense. So in here, you can get into your settings. You can, they can set up their bank account, connect it. They can set up their entities that they invest with. They've got a documents tab that stores everything. So they're going to show, their subscription agreements or their tax documents, and we're in a demo instance, so it's not fully built out. But you can tag them in a number of ways, so you'll be able to see like, tax documents versus executed documents, et cetera. You can see the investments, which is going to get built out a little bit. So something that's really cool with, this is a tangent, but on the deal room page, right, we have video embed. So we are strongly encouraging that you use video as much as possible and put it right on the page that you're presenting the deal. But we are going to add that into the investment reporting page as well. So each of these, rather than just showing, pretty light stuff here, we're actually going to have it so that we're going to turn each property effectively into like a social media feed. So like you can post like videos and pictures and stuff to each property as an update. Because to us, that's much more engaging to an investor, right? Like someone gives you money, the general experience is like you send me a piece of paper with a bunch of numbers that I probably don't understand, right? A report, we'll call it. And that's about it, you know, and I get a check every few months. If you can do something in the reporting section here, you know, and you're diligent about like doing videos and photos, et cetera, now the investor whole thing changes. It's like, oh, cool, like I paid for that drywall and that paint, or I paid for that light fixture, right? Or that new desk in the lobby, right? It's a totally different experience. And like that totally sets you apart from all of your competition. So that hasn't come out yet. That's something that's soon coming, but I'll jump in and show you what, so when they have offerings, they can see offerings that are in different fundraising stages, right? We'll jump in Trinity on the Park. This is really easy to build. Think like Squarespace for deal rooms. Like you're literally just like adding and deleting sections. Some salesperson got creative in here, obviously. This is the best deal ever. So you're showing total raise, minimum investment. You know, this is what Loom looks like. Hey, this is my counterpart, Tim. So, you know, it's recording him and he's scrolling, right? And showing people, hey, welcome into the deal. You know, our minimum, here's the overview, here's our minimum investment. If I want to show you, you know, a specific document, it's pop-up preview. We just want to keep everything on the same page as much as possible, right? You got your cash on cash, your IRR, you got your location. The documents and photos are in different tabs, right? So for the documents, when you click on documents, it's document preview. It's not asking you to download and then open something else or go to a different tab. That's very important to us, is keeping everybody on the same tab, right? We don't need them jumping around and then, you know, like, oh, now you got to sign something. Like now go create a DocuSign login, right? Now you got to fund something. Like now go to the bank or go somewhere else. Everything can be taken care of on platform, right? So we give them this very, you know, sort of homogeneous, like continuous experience throughout the entire thing, okay? On this one, you're seeing Mark is interested. That just means that the deal is in teaser mode. So there's a couple different modes that you can put the deal in. Teaser mode basically blocks before they get to the signing and funding process. Generally, if this is a live deal, you could hit subscribe. If you have a pre-approved offer, you just like, you put in your number, what entity you want to invest with, you fill out your paperwork and sign it. We have a full version of HelloSign built within the software that's included in the price. And then you can fund the deal as well. You can connect your bank account with ACH and fund the deal. And then you can use ACH as the manager to give them distributions, which is like a really cool thing to sell. And when I do demos, I tell people, and if you guys take a demo with us, like take notes, anything that you hear from us, you know, from the salespeople that you're like, oh, that's really clever. I bet like my investors would like that. Steal it, like word for word, and don't be shy. Like if you think it's going to be effective, steal it. That's what we want, right? Because at the end of the day, it's your features, not ours. Something that's really cool about this, you see this as Mark is interested. This is in teaser mode. So teaser mode blocks off so you don't go through the actual signing and funding process. It's just like a marketing mode effectively. So the original intent of this was like, hey, I've got something that's a little outside the asset class, or it's outside the geographical area that we typically invest in. You know, I'm going to build the deal. You know, it doesn't have to be totally complete, but you know, as much information as you have, and just show it out there and say like, hey, who's interested in this? It's a really great way to gather information and kind of poll people, but it's also really great just to build credibility. So if you're just coming in and you don't have your first deal yet, who cares? Make 3 teasers, it looks real legit, and no one's gonna know that they're not real deals. So all of a sudden you get this really great credibility. You have this like investor portal platform, which like, who has an investor portal platform? Only fancy people do, right? Like only syndicators I can trust, right? And we have pricing for like all different levels. So we really try and be as accommodating as possible, but this is what I'm talking about, like having like your process built before you find a property. You know, find a property and then trying to build the process along the way. Like you're hoping that your property presents itself in such an obvious way that your investors are like, oh yeah, I can't turn that one down. Like I mean, even if you're off by 5 points, like I'm still gonna do okay.
To speak to that, Quinn, it is the case that even if you have the most slam dunk, anybody who could see this would know that it's the best deal that's going to come across their desk in the next 6 months. that doesn't necessarily mean that you have the confidence of the person who you're trying to get to invest with you.
Mhm.
You really need to have that credibility, that honest or know, like, and trust. You have to have that built. And Hunter S. Thompson, or not Hunter S. Thompson, wrong Hunter. Hunter Thompson, who wrote the capital raising book, talks about how he had this incredible mobile home park deal and took it. It was a slam dunk. 35 millionaires in a room for lunch, asked them all to put on a piece of paper how much they want to invest with him. At the end of the day, he bought lunch for everybody. They all left. Nobody said that they would invest with him. And it was because, it wasn't the deal, because the deal was a slam dunk. It was just the things you're talking about. He couldn't communicate his processes. He couldn't communicate how things were going to be set up. And so it's not, the whole thing that people say, if you have the deal, money will follow, is not necessarily true. Jerome, our good buddy Jerome Myers, he's like, you have to have the deal, the experience, and the systems in place, and then the money comes. If you don't have any one of those threes, money's not coming.
I mean, you think about a lot of inferior products over the years that like have won out over superior competition simply because of like better marketing, right? And it's tough because I think a lot of people that get into this like think about it as a very quantitative game. Like, hey, I found a better property that's going to yield better returns. Like, you should invest with me. What is going on with you, right? But that's not generally what it comes down to. This is a human to human interaction. It's kind of hard to get away from that, right? Any other questions about the platform? This is like very high level stuff.
I do actually again. So if I'm understanding, I'm in the process of like just developing a presentation, very early stages of just like developing it in my head. I haven't anything in a PowerPoint presentation, but I could actually have this as part of my presentation to show, okay, so here's an example of a property that we're looking at right now, and have it in your, mark as interested mode, and would be able to open up and show that if indeed you chose to invest, this is the portfolio, the platform that you would have access to 24/7 to be able to see progress. These are the type of videos we'll be uploading. So at any point, these are your documents held here, so that it's all like laid out right there. If I'm understanding this correctly?
Yes. So the only comment I'd make on that is don't build it in PowerPoint. Just build it right here. Because then every time you update
That's
it,
what I was thinking. Yeah, that the PowerPoint would be like, hello, I'm living in the 1980s, where this is like bringing us, when I think about PowerPoint, I'm like, I really have to sell. But this is
there's some people out there who can do PowerPoint pretty well, I have to say.
It's
that's for you, but that's for you.
But like, if you do have a really compelling PowerPoint,
Mhm.
load it in here, right? Put it in as a document. But the thing is, like, in my view, like, I always put the videos at the top. Like, obviously we're kind of messing around with this, putting like this is the best deal ever in here. But generally I try and put the video right at the top. So if an investor comes in, like, the first thing I want them to see is like, oh, there's a video here, interesting. And you click on that video and it's like, hey guys, welcome in. Like, this is who we are. This is what we do. This is the deal. Okay. Here's, what here's what this looks like. As you go, you kind of go for like what your investors want to see, and also what you can do with video, right? The deal level video is really obvious, like walking them through this page, right? Like, hey, this is this, like, these are the financials, and I'm going to scroll through and tell you everything, right? But you may want to put an intro video in every single one, especially when you're early on. So you create a video that's like, hey guys, welcome in. Here's how I do things differently. Here's my process. Here's why you want to work with me. Everyone does it this way. It's old school. It's like, where do you know what's going on? I have this platform. I can have you come in here, you view the deals in this beautiful place, and you can sign and fund and get your reports and all that other stuff in here, right? So you can kind of do like a soft sell / walkthrough of the platform if you wanted to. So there's a lot of really creative things. Also, we have a pretty robust clientele set that comes up with really great ideas. So we try to take any of those ideas and steal them and give them to the people. So you get the benefit of a lot of great ideas coming through. Any more questions about that? Pretty straightforward. Feel free, like, use that link, grab a demo with us, because we go like much more in depth, so we'll show you not only like what you're seeing, which this is just kind of a high level of like the first couple of days. We will walk you through the entire fundraising process. So you see, like, if I was an investor, here are the steps that I would go through, right? And then you can think about that as part of like selling that as part of your process, right? Because again, these are your tools, not ours. But in conjunction with that, we also show you like the management side of things, or the management side of the platform. And we'll show like, oh, here's how you set up this deal. And then when they do this, this is a response to that. So we walk you through both sides and really show you exactly what's going on. But it's, I mean, even if it's just for your own edification, not to like waste our salespeople's time by any means, but like, it is really good just to talk through it and like come through, get ideas, see if it's something that's a good fit for you. Cool.
Do you guys have any template videos so syndicator can follow your format?
Yes and no. We've got a few like in our demo accounts, but if you, I actually have this probably more often than I want to admit. I do have clients that call me and they're like, hey, we rushed through this first deal. We've got our second one coming up. When we did our demo, you were saying these things and it was like, I don't know, unicorns and sunshine and whatever else. So like, can you help me with that? Right. So we will, like, we're very open about trying to do a lot of value add things at Groundbreaker. So if you call us and you're like, hey, I need a, give me an idea of a script, right? Like we can throw something together. We're not script writers, but we see a lot of things. So we're very open to try and help with that. Something that Ed heads up is our syndicator swipe email. That's another really cool value add that you get from us. So every Friday we send out, I think it's normally like 15 to 20, like just like articles, videos, blogs, and like none of it's ours. It's just like, hey, we have a social media and marketing team, and here's a bunch of stuff that we found that's really interesting. Most of our clients are not at the size to have this, or even if they are, they don't utilize this. So we're just sending this content, and literally every single one has a button that says like, share to Twitter, share to LinkedIn, share to Facebook, right? So we really try and think about, how do we help you improve your business? Everything that we do from like, pricing standpoint, like it's based on a number of factors, but like the main one is like, how much equity are you managing, right? So that obviously incentivizes us to help you grow. The bigger you grow, the bigger we grow, so we're trying to help raise the tide on everyone as best we can.
Yep. Just to clarify, so the syndicated swipe email is we have a social media team, and they gather what are the most popular commercial real estate related news this week, and then shares it with their customers so that they can just share that with their investors so that they can post that on social media. And speaking of templates, we share templates. So Quinn was talking about selling the process. We share templates that you can use on social media, and beautifully designed templates in various different colors, color themes that you can share with your LPs on their social media to show them the portal that you do have now. So it's going to talk about, one of them is, what is better than mailbox money is ACH money, right? And things like that talk about all of these benefits that you are able to offer to the LP. So those templates we got, and we are trying to come up with more and more ways to help our customers from a marketing perspective as well. Not to say that we do marketing for our customers, but we are providing resources. And the video template thing is actually a good idea. So perhaps we can put something together and have that available.
Yeah, I've got some ideas for that. I can definitely do that.
Yeah.
Definitely do that. Awesome. Yay. I got the seal of approval from Heath, so we're all good. All good.
All right. Well,
All good. Moving on.
is there someone? I heard someone talking.
You're on it. It's all you.
Don't be shy. Whoever it was, it sounded like a question. All right. Okay. So now, thanks, Aaron. Anybody who wants, drop your contact information into the chat. You can save the chat. There's little 3 dots kind of over to the right from where you type in your messages, and you can save chat, and then you'll have people's information. So go ahead and then drop that in. We're gonna go into the breakout sessions. We'll probably just do like, I don't know, like 2 rooms, 3 rooms, 2 rooms. I'll go ahead and I need to hop off, but I'm gonna give Hutch the host. Quinn, dude, thank you so much for the awesome presentation.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
I'm a big fan of well, there's probably like 85% of the presentations out there, whether it's in, I'm a scientist by day, whether it's business or stuff on YouTube. Like I get a lot of pet peeves that come across in presentations, but you just nailed it, dude. I appreciate it. It flowed really well, and a lot of great information. And Ed, man, it's good to see you again.
See you guys. Good to see you.
This dude is awesome, guys. If you get a chance to hang out with Ed for a little bit, man, you'll be happy you did.
Thanks, man.
But all right, so I got to get out. But Hutch, you go ahead and take this over. You guys have a easy.